Federal Fag and Alex Reynolds Mystery Series Book 2. Author Fred Hunter, publisher St. Martin's Press, New York, 1998. Narrator Eric Ost. For Raymond Dragon. Chapter 12. Before leaving the bar, Peter and I discussed whether or not to question Wren Forrest. Up until that point, we had refrained from confronting anyone directly involved with the video company. After all, the actors were not exactly what you'd call regular employees, in part because we were unsure of exactly what the investigation that Nelson staunchly refused to admit was taking place entailed. Whether he was investigating the video company didn't much matter to us at this point, because the company provided the only link we knew of between Patrick Gleason and Brett Lover. We thought we might as well start with the cameraman. However, when we scanned the crowd, we couldn't see Forrest for the fags. He had apparently already gone. Peter and I left the bar and headed down the side street on which we'd parked. Well, that was certainly the most decent porn star I've ever met, said Peter. It was too dark for me to see whether or not he was smiling. After a few moments had gone by without a response from me, Peter said, "Are you all right?" "I don't think so," I said. "I think I'm really a rotten person." Peter stopped in his tracks a few feet from a street lamp and gently tugged my arm to stop me. "Why do you say that?" I looked down at the ground. I really was embarrassed. "Peter, it made me happy. I don't mean happy. I mean, I was glad to find out that it bothered Pat to be doing porn. What a vindictive old prick I become. That's not the reaction of a kind person." In the dimness of that light, I could see a sweet smile spread across his face, and that love I've mentioned before appeared in his eyes. "I think you're wrong," he said. "I think it's the reaction of a compassionate person. You're not glad that he was hurt. You're glad to find out he was human. Being human is a pretty good accomplishment, both for him and for you." He gave me a light kiss on the lips, and we started down the street again, walking along the outside of the bar. Just after we passed the street light beside which we'd stopped was a sort of alley that ran behind the bar, I suppose for deliveries and garbage pickups and the like. As we stepped beyond the wall, two men appeared from the alley and stood in front of us, one blocking Peter and the other blocking me. "What is this?" said Peter. Without a word, they grabbed the front of our shirts, pulling the collars tightly around our necks, and shoved us into the alley up against the back wall of the bar. As my shoulders hit the wall, I could feel the wood give way a little, and hoped that was an indication of how weak the wall was instead of how much force had been used to slam me against it. Unfortunately, the pain radiating back and forth from my shoulders to my lungs was a testament to who'd received the worst of the shock. "You fucking faggots never give up, do you?" said the one holding me. The alley was hopelessly dark, and I couldn't have described either of these men in anything approaching detail if my life depended on it, which was an unfortunate cliché to call to mind at that particular moment. It was like trying to make out the face of someone who was standing just outside of the lighting in a John Carpenter film. The odd thing about it was that there was something inexplicably familiar about them, and though I couldn't have sworn to it in court, I was sure these guys had been serving as guards at the pretty party. "What do you want?" "You ask too many questions. We want you to stop." "Is this a warning?" I said, choking the words out. His fist holding my collar together against my Adam's apple was making it really difficult to breathe, let alone talk. I thought I could see the darkness of his face shift into something resembling a smile, but it could have been the pleasure in his voice that made me think that. "We don't warn, we kill. You ought to know that by now." With that, both men reached into their respective pockets. My assailant slid his hand up in front of my face and moved his thumb. Even in the general murk, I could see the blade shimmer. He let out a pleased little snort and said, "You're about to see the inside of your stomach, faggot." The two of them pulled back the blades as if to strike, when suddenly a voice from a different quarter yelled, "Hey, what's going on?" Both assailants' heads snapped in the direction of the voice, and we were suspended for a moment while they tried to make out who was standing there on the sidewalk silhouetted by the streetlight. A few feet back, I turned my head as much as I could, just in time to see the silhouette's arm move quickly in and out of its pocket. He yelled, "Let them go," and let off a shot into the air. Without a word, the men let go of us and took off down the alley. Peter and I slumped halfway to the ground and gasped for breath as the silhouette passed into the shadows beside us. He stuck his gun back in the pocket and helped right us. "You okay?" "I guess," I said. "Peter?" "Yeah," Peter replied, rubbing his neck. "Thanks for helping us," he gasped. "It was nothing," he replied. We followed him out of the alley and into the light of the street lamp. I stopped abruptly, in shock, as I realized who our savior was. "You're Ren Forrest, aren't you?" I said. He nodded. "I thought I recognized you in the bar. You were at the party last night, weren't you?" "Yeah." In the cold light of the lamp, Forrest was singularly unattractive in a pocket protector kind of way. He looked not unlike Peter Lorre in his later years, though he was at most in his late 30s. His eyes were buggy, and even in his dim light, I could tell that his black hair was greasy. I would be willing to bet he drooled while he did his job. He was the last person I'd want to have filming me having sex. That didn't come out quite the way I meant it. "You're the cameraman for Man-O Man Productions, aren't you?" said Peter. "Videographer," he corrected. "Sorry," said Peter demurely. "So what was that all about?" I glanced at Peter and then said, "I'm not sure, except that we were friends of Patrick Gleason." "The guy that was killed?" Forrest broke in eagerly. His avidity was really distasteful. I answered slowly, "Yeah, the guy that was killed." Forrest's bug eyes rolled from me to Peter, then back to me. "Why would that have anything to do with you?" "It doesn't," said Peter. "It's just that we've been asking a few questions about the murder, and apparently some people don't like it." Forrest's face darkened briefly, as if a cloud had obscured the street lamp. "Yeah, I can see where some people wouldn't want you asking questions about that. These aren't the kind of people who would welcome being questioned about anything." Far from warning us, Forrest sounded almost afraid. "Surely the police will be asking questions," I said. "Oh, yeah. He nodded eagerly. I was surprised that his head didn't rattle. "The police have been around the company asking questions." "By around the company, I take it you mean Derek Holmes?" "Oh, yeah, as well as me." "What did you tell him?" That same dark, half-fearful look came into his eyes. He looked at me as if he couldn't quite focus and said, "There wasn't anything to tell. I don't know anything about what happened to Gleason, and I wasn't there when they questioned Derek, so I don't know what he told the cops, though I'm sure he didn't have anything to say either, and the police haven't been back." I couldn't help shooting Peter a look and saying, "I told you they wouldn't pursue it." An abbreviated smile appeared on Forrest's face. "Well, even the police know when to leave well enough alone. They know there's nothing can be done about this sort of thing, so they know when it's better to let it go. I haven't been in the business long, but I know that much." "There were a couple of questions we'd like to ask you, though," I said. "Yeah? You were the videographer when Patrick performed with Brett Lover?" "Yeah, I did that one. That Patrick was good. I really was afraid Forrest was going to drool. He could keep it up for the camera. Not everyone can. Didn't go soft at all." "I'm sure he was good at what he did," I intoned, "but that's not what I wanted to know about. Can you tell me if he said anything unusual during that filming?" Forrest cocked his head and looked at me out of the corner of his eyes. He looked as if he didn't want to understand what I was asking. "Like what?" "He didn't say much outside the script." "Well, do you remember him saying anything about the CIA?" "The CIA?" said Forrest loudly with a short laugh that sounded like a bark. A little bit of mucus ran out of his left nostril, and he wiped it away with his sleeve. "No, I didn't hear him say anything about the CIA. What the hell would he be saying about them? Was it a joke?" "No," I said flatly. "It was no joke. Brett Lover told us that Patrick had said something about the CIA. I just wondered if you heard it." "Well, Brett was closer to him than I was," Forrest replied with a really unpleasant leer. "And now Brett Lover is dead," said Peter. Forrest's eyes boggled. "He's dead? He's dead too? Oh, sweet Jesus!" He certainly looked surprised, but there was something a little overdone about the expression on his face. Something behind those widened eyes of his that made me think he just might have known about Lover's death already. "Two guys dead," Forrest continued. "If I was you guys, I'd take a hint from the police and just leave this alone." I glanced at Peter, who was staring at Forrest through slightly narrowed eyes. "Maybe we'll do that," he said. You'll be safer. You don't know what these people are like. He had lost his panicked look and replaced it with a cunning smile, the meaning of which I didn't even want to know. Yeah, well, thanks for helping us out against those guys. You probably saved our lives, said Peter. By the way, what were you doing here tonight? Forrest's shoulders moved in, what I took to be his version of a shrug. Just looking around. Never know when I might spot some new talent. Do you always carry a gun? Forrest rolled his eyes over in Peter's direction and said with the utmost seriousness, Like I said, this is a dangerous business. With that, he wandered on into the darkness. We watched him go and then started back down the street toward our car. That is one strange dude, said Peter. I wonder if he was lying, I said. About what? Well, how big a space could they have been filming in? How could he have not heard what Patrick said? Maybe he left the room for a minute. Maybe. I'll tell you another thing that bothers me. Doesn't it strike you as incredibly lucky that he showed up when he did? Incredible is the word. It was way too fortuitous, said Peter grimly. Gay Mysteries audiobooks. I think it is easy to hate a label, but a face humanizes the word. So this effort is twofold. To offer comfort to those like myself that your world didn't end because you don't fit into the view of acceptable society on both sides. And in hopes of helping those with family that are LGBTQ, that it doesn't mean we are aliens from the child they once knew. Reassure them so they can maybe be supportive at the same time, being true to their values.